10 years ago, Scott Cawthon posted this teaser on scottgames.com of what was supposed to be the final FNaF game. This teaser would feature a very decrepit and monstrous version of Freddy Fazbear, who we later learned was named Nightmare Freddy. While the sight of this character certainly caught people's attention, there was one thing hidden in this teaser that caught everyone's interest. Deep in the teaser's source code, the numbers 8s and 7s covered the whole code. The reason fans were so excited when seeing these numbers was because this game was presumably going to solve the Bite of 87, an event we heard about in the first game, where an unknown character was walking around during the day and would suddenly bite a person on their head. While the victim survived, his entire frontal lobe was removed. That prompted Fazbear Entertainment to ban all of the animatronics from walking around during the day. While theorists generally agreed on who most likely did the bite, it was never 100% confirmed. So, this final chapter of the original games was supposedly about to answer that question. As more and more teasers came out, with 87 still in the source code and even ones in the teaser itself, it seemed almost confirmed that the fourth game was about the Bite of 87. But then one day, on July 21st, 2015, 2 days before the game came out, the 87s in the source code was changed to 83, which was confusing to say the least. Then it became more messy when the game came out, and when fans saw the Night 5 minigame happen, a lot of them thought this was the Bite of 87. But after time passed and the dust settled a bit, theorists discovered this Easter egg in Crying Child's home. If we turn on the TV, a TV show or a commercial would play for Fredbear and Friends 1983. Once again, people saw the year 83 being mentioned. While they were skeptical at first, fans would really analyze this game and find out this cannot be the Bite of 87. Not only did the commercial have 1983 written on it, but the establishment where the kid got bit, Fredbear's Family Diner, was said to have been closed for years during the events of the second game, which took place in 1987. Also in the Night 6 minigame, we hear the crying child flatline and he dies, which can't be the case if this was the Bite of 87, because the victim survived the bite. But despite that, there were still doubters that still believed this was the Bite of 87. But then years later, future projects and even Scott Cawthon himself have confirmed that this was the Bite of 83. Since we now know this, then this leaves us with one burning question. Why were the 87s in the source code in the first place? Did Scott change the story mid-development? Or was this a red herring to generate more buzz? Well, that's what I and a special guest are here to answer. And believe me when I say, I'm 90% confident of the answer we got. But before we move any further, don't forget to like and subscribe. I would greatly appreciate it. We're so close to 3,000 subscribers, and I really want to reach that goal before the end of the year. Now, for this section of the video, I want to debunk something the community has spread around this topic. Many believe that the 87s in the source code were all changed because Scott decided to change the story, and it was too late in development to change anything else. But simply put, this isn't the case at all. When the game was first announced on April 27, 2015, it had a release date of Halloween 2015. As months passed, Halloween was still the set release date, and the 87s remained in the source code. Then on July 12, Scott sent an email to a bunch of YouTubers telling them the game was coming out on August 8, 2015, for the 1-year anniversary of Five Nights at Freddy's. So by this point, Scott was pretty much done with the game. 10 days after that announcement, Scott had sent Dako and Razbowski early demos that they could play with. Then a day later, the game released early. The 83 was added onto the source code just 2 days before release. If Scott had wanted to change the story mid-development like some people believe, then why release the game early at all? He still had 3 months before the initial Halloween release date. Him adding 83 into the source code is not a last-minute thing, it was just another thing to tease. A similar thing happened with the previous game. The Funtime Baby teaser was supposed to be the first of 10 teasers counting down until the game released, but Scott didn't want to wait anymore and just released it 2 days later. And something that a lot of people miss is that even when Scott added the 83 in the source code, the 87s were still present, even after the game released. Scott is not an idiot. He wouldn't make a game set in Fredbear's in 1987, when just 2 games before, he established that the diner was already closed for years in 1987. The game was never supposed to be about the bite of 87. It was always meant to take place in 83. But that again leaves us with why was 87 in the source code in the first place. After literal months of research and procrastination, I think I finally got the answer, which I've split into 2 parts. The first part will be covered by our special guest, Michael 2000, and the other part will be covered by me. So without further ado, take it away, Michael.
Now, it's obvious that both 83 and 87 in the source code relate to the fact that these 2 dates involve a bite. But it seems like the source code is not just connecting the 2 events. There are also other connections that fnaflore has with 1987 and the story of FNAF 2. In both games, we see a mangled Funtime Foxy, we see Toy Chica missing her beak, we see a balloon kid, we see the 2 shadows, there's mentions of rumors surrounding the restaurant about how people go missing, and we have an animatronic biting someone in a final birthday party at the end of the week. Even beyond that, in FNAF 3, we know that CC has a huge connection to the Happiest Day minigames. Minigames that feature either characters from the 1987 location or Fredbear's. CC's connection to Fredbear's is obvious, but we again have CC connected to the 1987 pizzeria. So what makes this location so special? Well, what if I told you that there is a possibility that CC has actually visited that location when he was alive? To show you how Sam and I got to this conclusion, let's start with the FNAF 2 movie. The FNAF 2 movie trailer tells us that the toy location in that universe was actually the first Freddy Fazbear's restaurant before the MCI location. And Matthew Lillard has confirmed that the movies do answer some stuff in the games. So there is some merit to what I'm going to talk about, which is the possibility that the new and improved Freddy Fazbear's Pizza was not actually new at all. This place was in fact an old and run-down building that was reopened in 1987. Just look at the place. The walls are all worn, there's wires hanging from the ceiling, and there's dirt on the floor. Mind you, by the time we start the game, the building was open in 1987 for a few weeks at most. So how the hell did it reach this state if it was brand new? There's also the fact that the carousel features the Core 4, which includes Classic Foxy instead of Funtime Foxy, which implies that this location actually featured Classic Foxy at some point. The newspaper clipping also describes the location as a vintage pizzeria given new life. So the building itself could be old. The fact it's also the grand reopening also suggests that the place could have been opened at some point in the past. Before anyone gets mad, we're not saying that these animatronics are old, just the building. Maybe, like in the movie universe, this was the first Freddy Fazbear's Pizza opened, and CC had still been alive to see it. We know that Freddy's was opened in 1983. While it is not specified if it opened before or after the bite, it is implied that Freddy's is quite popular at the time because we see several masks, toys, and plushies. We also see, in the week before, a Freddy model that was used in, quote, the Fredbear days, so before the big bite. Secret of the Mimic also shows us that Freddy's was planned all the way back since the 70s. So what we're getting at is that the FNAF 2 location was most likely originally opened in 1983. In FNAF 4, we see merch of the toys before 1987. The toys are also featured in the carousel seen in Help Wanted 2. Along with classics. We think CC once visited this vintage location at some point. Then, the location closed down, possibly because of Charlie's death, like in the movie. Then, in 1987, the place was renovated into the FNAF 2 location we're familiar with. But how can we be so sure that CC visited this specific location? Well, in the survival logbook, we see Cassidy ask CC a bunch of questions about his past. One of those questions that caught our eyes was, this. Was your favorite ride the carousel? Now, if we treat this like the other questions she asks, then Cassidy knows things about Cece's past and is trying to make him remember. How she knows about this is a video for another day, but at some point in Cece's life, he visited a Fazbear location that featured a carousel. The FNAF 2 location is the only building that we've seen that is confirmed to actually feature a carousel. So if Cece did indeed visit the vintage location, why was it so special to him? Couldn't just be that he visited this place once and that's it. There has to be something more, especially when so much tragedy happens in the building. So then, Sam thought of an idea. Don't you remember what you saw? You know what will happen if he catches you. We've never truly known what Cece saw, and while I don't have a definitive answer to what he saw, I think it's possible that Sam knows where he saw it. What if during Cece's visit to the vintage location, he saw something he misunderstood and traumatized him, soaking the entire building with his fear? We know from the Silver Eyes that memories and feelings can linger in places. People could sometimes feel the memory or emotion of someone else that was there before them, like old houses, for example. Even though you've never visited the place before, you can walk in and feel sad or nostalgic. That's why it seemed like the FNAF 2 location was cursed in a way. Why, in just 2 weeks, the kids tore up Funtime Foxy, William killed 5 more kids, shadows of Fredbear and Bonnie appeared, the animatronics became hostile with Toy Chica removing her beak, and why, at the end of the restaurant's final day, it all ended with a person being bitten by an animatronic. This place was the source of Cece's fear towards the animatronics. And, as we know, negative emotions are stronger and more potent than positive ones. In the character encyclopedia, there's a page that describes how Cece is haunted by terrible memories of a visit to Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. So the book directly tells us that Cece saw something traumatizing during his visit to a Freddy's location. Several times in the book, Fredbear's is mentioned correctly, especially in the Cece section of the book. The book doesn't confuse Freddy's and Fredbear's, so making that distinction could be important. But then again, this whole book is unreliable, and I wouldn't count it as strong evidence. There was also an idea that Sam had early on, that maybe the FNAF 2 location used to be Fredbear's, which could work really well and would connect the location to Cece even more, and would even explain really well why Cece cursed the location and why another bite would have happened, as if Cece left his mark on the building when he got bit and made it happen again, as if the past is doomed to repeat. While I see these two locations being the same as likely, I think I still lean more into the FNAF 2 location being a different location altogether, since we've never seen Fredbear's depicted with a carousel, which makes sense, since why would it? It's a small diner with only 2 characters, and when Ralph talks about Fredbear's in FNAF 2, he talks about it like it's another building altogether. However, there is a pre-existing theory that the original restaurant owner means the owner of the FNAF 2 building itself, not just the original restaurant of the Freddy's franchise in general. I don't know. For Sam and I, it doesn't feel right to make these 2 locations the same, especially when FNAF 4 implies that Freddy's is already open and popular.
So now that we've established how Crying Child might have a connection to the 87 location, let's now discuss the final big mystery that FNAF 4 was supposed to answer. After really analyzing these teasers and the main game itself, it finally made me realize that this game blatantly answers who caused the bite of 87. But instead of just saying it outright, I want to have a bit of fun with this. In total, there are 15 characters, or should I say 15 suspects, present in the FNAF 2 location. And yes, I am including the Withers as well, because contrary to popular belief, the toys are not the only suspects. Nothing in FNAF 2 suggests that one of the toys 100% has to have done the bite. This was never implied. People like to bring up that the toys being scrapped is because of the bite, but that's not even true. This newspaper was printed just before the bite even happens. We see this newspaper just after Jeremy's final night shift, just before the birthday party, and it makes no mention of a bite at all. In the week before, it was said that Fazbear's received a lot of bad press from the media because of the bite, and they quote-unquote blew the incident out of proportion, so much so that it still affects them at the time of FNAF 1. So where's any of that in the Night 6 newspaper? The only reason the toys were gonna be scrapped in the first place was because the toys were acting unusual and hostile towards adults, because their facial recognition was all glitched out. And I know people are gonna say that none of the wizards can't be the culprit since they are stuck in parts and service and can't move, which, to be honest, is a non-argument. The parts and service door is always left open, and the wizards aren't also meant to walk around at night either. Go figure, the robot that's haunted by a vengeful soul isn't acting normal. So yes, one of the wizards could have just walked out and did the bite, no big deal. Am I saying the toys can't do the bite? Certainly not, but it would be unfair to remove the wizards from the suspect list as well. So now that we have the full suspect list, let's narrow it down to just a couple of characters that have the most evidence of doing the bite. So first, let's remove the suspects that physically can't do the bite. So I'm gonna remove BB, JJ, the puppet, Withered Bonnie, and Withered Chica since her jaw is stuck. I'm also gonna remove the Easter egg animatronics since there is absolutely zero evidence for them being the culprit. Now, even though all of the toys were present during the birthday party, I'm gonna remove Toy Freddy and Toy Bonnie from the list since they basically have no evidence other than being there. I'm also gonna remove Toy Chica. Even though she does have slight evidence that she did the bite, her way of attack wouldn't match up with what we know about the incident. If Toy Chica is like the rest of her Chica counterparts, then she would just either peck her victim instead of biting, or straight up just eat them. So it wouldn't be one bite, it will be several. So now we are left with 4 suspects, and arguably the characters with the most evidence of who did the bite. So, who is it? Well, after analyzing everything FNAF 4 gave us, the teasers, the messages, the source code, the connections to FNAF 2, I think the culprit of the bite of 87 is Golden Freddy. Before you click off the video, let's analyze why I think this. Like Michael O2K mentioned earlier, FNAF 4 mirrors and even foreshadows a lot of things that would happen in the future, like Toy Chica without a beak, a mangled Funtime Foxy, a teleporting Golden Freddy, shadows based on Freddy and Bonnie. But it's not just FNAF 2 stuff, we also see references to the other 2 games, like the Foxy plush being the only one broken, which mirrors the animatronic version being out of order, which was referenced in Foxy's teaser. Mike also jumping out wearing a Foxy mask references how FNAF 1 Foxy suddenly pops out and screams. The game also foreshadows that the animatronics come to life at night and attack. The Fredbear and Friends commercial only feature animatronics haunted by the 5 kids, 5 friends. We even have the Finger Trap toy referencing Springtrap. You get it. My point is that many characters go through the same thing, and history seemingly repeats itself years later in a way. So if we heard about a bite taking place during the day in a final birthday party, and we see Fredbear doing another bite during the day in a final birthday party, then theoretically, history would again repeat itself with Golden Freddy being the culprit. That's most likely why Scott asked us about the tiny Toy Chica missing her beak. It was a clue to lead us into this line of thinking, by foreshadowing how the characters go through the same thing in the future. Scott is telling us who would do the bite of 87 in the future, which would really make sense when factoring in why the clue was posted in the first place. In 2015, MatPat hosted a livestream trying to solve FNAF 4's confusing story. And when Matt was talking about how the 87s were most likely a red herring and isn't actually important to FNAF 4, Scott posted this Toy Chica clue shortly after. And this isn't just a coincidence, because another clue, that being the 4 games 1 story, is possibly also a response to MatPat, because shortly before, he was discussing that FNAF 2 didn't actually happen and is all a dream. So Scott posting that clue could be to show us that all of the games did happen and is all one story. So the tiny Toy Chica clue was a hint to solve the importance of 87 in the game. This would essentially fulfill the promise Scott made to us with the 87s on the source code and figuring out who did the bite. We don't get to see the event itself, but we would know who would do it eventually later on. Contrary to popular belief, Golden Freddy is not an apparition of an empty suit. The week before, the movie, the novels, and frights all tell us that Golden Freddy is in fact an actual physical spring-lock suit that can physically teleport around. This guy isn't an empty suit. We still see his spring-lock endo and a few wires popping out of the suit. Fritz can even tamper with Golden Freddy's AI. How would that even be possible if he didn't have an endo? We can even see Golden Freddy standing up a few times in this franchise, so he's not always in a slump position. But what other evidence is there that he did the bite? Well, first, we know Golden Freddy can cause a bite strong enough to cause real damage to the head. That's backed up in the week before, when Freddy was about to kill Ralph. He wondered what it would be like missing his frontal lobe, which could show us that Freddy, and at least his recolor, could have done this before. Golden Freddy also first becomes active in night 6, the night just before the final birthday party, and since he's more powerful and aggressive than the others, he would be more likely to leave the parts and service room whenever he liked, which we know for a fact he did, multiple times even, because we see multiple kids' drawings depicting Golden Freddy being active during the day, and even being in the dining room for people to see. He's even standing up rather than being slumped over. So what I think happened is that after night 6, Golden Freddy stays active until the following morning, and during the birthday party, Golden Freddy just teleported or walked out of the parts and service room into the dining area like he usually does and caused the bite. Him suddenly causing the bite that way would actually tie in with the fact that no one knew why the bite happened in the first place and what the victim did to cause it. Golden Freddy suddenly teleporting and biting a person would definitely raise some heads and would account for the media taking things out of proportion. Maybe they aren't taking things too far. Maybe they are telling the truth, even though it seemed very bizarre. This wouldn't even be the first time we see Golden Freddy do something like this, because again in the week before, where when Ralph hears a recording of the big bite, Golden Freddy immediately spawns behind him and crushes Ralph's head. Whenever Crying Child is heavily involved with something, Golden Freddy is always there. And assuming that the FNAF 2 location is cursed, then Golden Freddy would definitely be involved with another attack. Even Into the Pit has an achievement referencing the bite of 87, and the icon of that achievement has Golden Freddy biting something. There's also the FNAF 4 teasers and the questions they were asking. Was it me? Was it me? Or me? And for Nightmare Fredbear, it was, or was it me? And in the bottom it presumably says, probably me. All of that was teased while the 87s were in the source code. The was it me thing is a question that ties in with the it's me hallucination. Was it me? It's me. Yes, Golden Freddy isn't the only character associated with it's me. All of the 5 robots are, and they all have said that phrase multiple times before. But Golden Freddy was the one who actually did the bite and killed the kid. That's why he's always associated more with that line. And that's why he would be the most likely candidate for another bite happening. There's also the fact that when we type in 1987 in the custom night, Golden Freddy jump scares us. While yes, this was added as a troll to the fandom, it doesn't mean Scott couldn't have just expanded on it later on, or was just killing 2 birds with 1 stone, answering who did the bite while giving fans a scare. So in my opinion, FNAF 4 makes it abundantly clear that Golden Freddy caused the bite of 87. But that's just my thoughts. I would love to hear yours down in the comments below. And I once again want to thank Michael02000 for joining my video. I really do appreciate it. Everyone who's watching this video right now should check out their channel. They make fantastic high quality videos. Remember to also subscribe to my channel and help me reach 3K subscribers before the end of the year. So, thank you for watching. See you on the flip side.